Hey friend, welcome. It's Michaela. I cannot believe January is already over, but it was such a good reading month for me. Let's update this reading journal with all the books that we read in January. So I was able to finish 8 books this past month, 4 of which I finished during my 24-hour readathon challenge. I was so excited to just start reading this year that I was like, yeah, I want to do another readathon challenge just to immerse myself in all of these books. So the first book I read was called And the Category Is, Inside New York's Vogue, House, and Ballroom Community. The second book I read was called Book Lovers. The third book was called Such a Fun Age. I also read Bet on It, Legends and Lattes, Verity, and the Iliad during my 24-hour readathon. And then lastly, I read The Odyssey. So although I set a goal to read 52 books this year on my Goodreads account, I really don't want to hold myself to a number because it seems like in recent years, whenever I set a Goodreads goal, I never reach it. So I really wanted to just focus on doing different reading challenges to include the alphabet challenge, where I read books with the title of each letter of the alphabet. So for this past month, I was able to color in A for And the Category Is, L for Legends and Lattes, S for Such a Fun Age, and V for Verity. I left the B uncolored because there are some letters on here that I'm saving for specific books. So even though I read Bet on It and Book Lovers, I'm not going to color in the B because I am saving that one for a specific book that I've been putting off, and I'm just hoping that this challenge will help me just finally read that book. I'm also doing the alphabet challenge for my graphic novels as well, so I was able to color in I for the Iliad and O for the Odyssey. So moving on to my quotes page, the first quote I'm going to write is actually from And the Category Is, and the quote says, "Who do you desire to be now? Not who are you going to be? Who do you desire to be? You have the power to choose how you want to reflect yourself in the universe. Who do you desire to be?" I absolutely loved this quote when I first read it. I read it multiple times because I felt like it was kind of thought-provoking. I even stopped for a second and was like, dang, who do I want to be? It really made me think and it made me feel on a deeper level, and I just absolutely love this quote. Speaking of, here is my spread for And the Category Is, Inside New York's Vogue, House, and Ballroom Community. This book was really, really good. Ricky Tucker's writing reads more like a love letter to the ballroom community, but it still sheds light on the history of ballroom, the culture, the people, the art, the freedom, the joy, a way to express yourself and to make a statement. It lets queer voices be heard, specifically in the Black and Latinx communities. Ballroom serves as a safe space for LGBTQ+ youth, especially Black trans women, to be themselves. Honestly, reading more about the found family aspect of ballroom was probably one of my favorite parts of this book. I was aware of different houses and house mothers and house fathers, but Ricky touched deeply on how some of these chosen families are formed and, people not feeling comfortable or part of their biological families, and then finding these meaningful, lifelong relationships through ballroom. The writing was just really beautiful and personal, and I just loved every single moment of it. I gave this book 10s across the board. It was a 5-star read for sure. Okay, so this next book. I've never read a book that makes me feel like how this book makes me feel, and I'm not even necessarily saying that in a good way. So a little brief synopsis of this book. It says, Such a Fun Age is a page-turning and big-hearted story about race and privilege set around a young Black babysitter, her well-intentioned employer, and a surprising connection that threatens to undo them both. Alix Chamberlain is a woman who gets what she wants and has made a living showing other women how to do the same. So she is shocked when her babysitter, Amira Tucker, is confronted while watching the Chamberlain's toddler one night, walking the aisles of their local high-end supermarket. The store's security guard, seeing a young Black woman out late with a white child, accuses Amira of kidnapping 2-year-old Briar. A small crowd gathers, a bystander films everything, and Amira is furious and humiliated. Alix resolves to make things right, but Amira herself is aimless, broke, and weary of Alix's desire to help. At 25, she is about to lose her health insurance and has no idea what she wants to do with her life. When the video of Amira unearths someone from Alix's past, both women find themselves themselves on a crash course that will upend everything they knew about themselves and each other with empathy and piercing social commentary. Such a Fun Age explores the stickiness of transactional relationships, what it means to make someone family, and the complicated reality of being a grown-up. So that synopsis I just read literally all happens within the first part of the book. So I was kind of like, what more could this book possibly be about? And boy, was I in for a random roller coaster. This book confused the heck out of me as far as how I felt internally. This is probably the first book I've ever questioned and wondered, who was this book made for? Like, I believe every book is made for everyone because anyone should be able to read and enjoy whatever book they want. But many times throughout this book, I was just wondering, who was the intended audience? And maybe I'm not asking the right questions. Maybe this book was supposed to be read and either enjoyed or not. Simple as that. I don't know. The only thing I really enjoyed about this book was the relatability to Amira and her friends, as well as the slightly entertaining, messy drama and karma that was woven throughout this book. I didn't particularly like Alix or her friends, but I didn't hate them. I just felt like other from them, if that makes sense. Just like completely indifference towards them. I didn't particularly want to see them fail, although there were a few things that Alix did specifically in her past where I was just like, girl, no, absolutely not. So the karma was refreshing, even though I felt like it could have been a little bit more karma in there. But yeah, I just wasn't rooting for them. They just were there. But I also felt like their personalities were real. I didn't feel like their characters were dramatized. Like, there are people who probably could relate to their characters. To me, it just didn't feel exaggerated. But maybe it was supposed to feel exaggerated. I don't know. I just have so many questions with this book. There's also a moment where Amira is put in this awkward situation by the white guy that she's dating, where he says the N-word to her while telling a story, and she's completely caught off guard and freezes, and she never really addresses it. And I've seen a few reviews about how some people didn't like how she responded, or they didn't think that she responded correctly. But to be honest, I thought that she was really relatable in that situation. I've been put in similar cringy, uncomfortable situations, especially at that age, or if this is like your first encounter with like racism or like microaggressions, you can sometimes be taken aback and you want to be polite, but also you really have no idea how you're supposed to respond. So her reaction didn't bother me, but the conversation was very cringe. Ugh, this book. I have so many things I want to say about it, but yet I can't even comprehend my feelings after reading it. I ended up giving this a very mid, very confusing 3 stars. The design, I wanted to incorporate the cover of the book, but I did like little question marks because I didn't really know how to feel about this book. I thought this came out perfect because this book was just a mess. So one of the books that I read during my 24-hour readathon was called Legends and Lattes. This book is about an orc named Viv who is tired from bounty and bloodshed, and she's hanging up her sword to start her dream of running a coffee shop in this little city called Thune, where literally no one's ever even heard of coffee. They have no idea what it is, and this book is just so cute. This book was described as high fantasy, low stakes, and good company, and I thought that that's exactly what this book was about. It was so cute. It was just a cozy, lighthearted read, gave big fall vibes, so perfect for like the fall time. And my favorite part was when they like created new menu items such as like iced coffee or cinnamon rolls or chocolate croissants. It was just so cute. I also loved learning about each of the characters who helped her build the coffee shop and run the coffee shop day to day. And even some of the like customers were kind of skeptical, but they all still believed in and supported her dream to help make it a reality. And I just absolutely adored this book. I gave this a fantastical 5 stars. Although Viv retired from adventuring to start her coffee shop, I would like to think that deep down in her heart, she still loves to adventure, and that's her first love. So for the design of this page, I wanted to make it look like they were planning another adventure or like another heist. So they have the map kind of laid out, they have like the notes on top, they even have like little coffee cup stains because, you know, they're at a coffee shop, and then they're even drawing on the map to like X marked the spot to show where the next treasure is for their next adventure. I just love how this came out. So during my 24-hour readathon, I was able to finish this audiobook that I had started prior to the readathon called Bet on It. This one was a sweet and cute romance that kind of like slowly develops between the main character Asia and her love interest Walker. I thought their relationship was like not over fluffed. It felt more on the real side and not like super romance novel-y. I gave this book a sweet 3.5 star, but I ended up rounding it up to 4 stars on Goodreads. As I mentioned, I did finish this one during my 24-hour readathon challenge, and so I talk about this book as well as Legends and Lattes, Verity, and the Iliad and the Odyssey in a lot more detail over in that video. Feel free to go check that one out. I will link it up above and down below. And lastly, book lovers, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I enjoyed how the author Emily Henry like made fun of like romance tropes and cliches while writing a like very tropey enemies to lovers romance. I also really enjoyed the main character Nora, who wasn't your typical main character in like a romance novel. She's described as being a shark, being tough, being this woman from the city who doesn't put up with anybody's BS. She knows exactly what she wants and she doesn't settle. And I like that she wasn't expected to change herself. In fact, she didn't change herself. And even more so, she would like, you know, move on from someone or something that didn't meet her standards, and I just really appreciated that. I also didn't personally think her personality was that bad. I actually thought she was very caring, especially towards her sister and her nieces and her brother-in-law. Like, I don't know, I just didn't really see this whole like villainy side, but you know, some people are different in their personal lives versus their professional lives, so maybe that's where that came from. But I did enjoy the enemies to lovers relationship between Nora and Charlie. This was a very cute book, and I gave this a very big 5 stars. Okay, so this next book is Verity, and I wrote my review down beforehand because it contains a lot of spoilers because I just had to get this off of my heart and my mind. So I thought I should do a cover page for this so like, you know, you can't really see what I wrote out of vellum. I don't know why I was like, oh, let's do it out of vellum, a see-through paper. And so I was testing it out with my other pages that had white writing on it, and you can see right through it, obviously, Michaela. So I had to figure out another way to go about covering this page. So yeah. So this book, I put off reading this book for a while because it was so hyped on social media and I didn't really want to be disappointed. I wasn't necessarily disappointed, but let me just say, this is not the most thrilling story I've ever read. I love psychological thrillers. I've read way more thrilling and interesting stories, but the little messed up pieces that's woven throughout this book and that ending sent me. That ending absolutely sent me. I can usually kind of tell what an ending is gonna be because I read so many of these books. This one I could not tell. It was so surprising, and that's why I had to write about it. I had to write about it because I feel like it can go one of two ways, and I know how I think it kind of ends. But anyway, I don't want to spoil anything. This might be a slight hot take, but a very, very small part of me felt like Colleen Hoover was like, what is the most outlandish thing I could possibly ever write? Oh, that. Okay, now that I wrote that, let's try to build a story around it. And that is kind of what it felt like, of like this shocking piece was written first because it was just like, oh my God, how dare. And then the story was created around it. I don't know. Maybe that's not fair to say. I gave this a very good, thrilling, chilling 5 stars. I love this just for the ending alone. And lastly, the Iliad and the Odyssey. I was able to finish the graphic novel version of the Iliad during my 24-hour readathon and start the graphic novel Odyssey, which I then finished after the readathon. These were so good. The illustrations were amazing. Of course, the Iliad took me back. I haven't read this story in a while, so it took me back, and it of course reminded me of the Song of Achilles, which just broke my heart all over again. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And the Odyssey is one of my favorite books of all time as well. I loved both of these. These were just great. I thought the artist did a great job of picking out the most important pieces of both of those stories to then illustrate. And although The Odyssey is one of my favorite books of all time, I have not read it since like maybe 2018, 2019. And I've since read other iterations of The Odyssey, like Circe, for example. And I completely just forgot the actual ending that Homer had for Odysseus. I'm sitting here thinking it was going to be the tragic ending that I had in my mind. But I was actually kind of happy that it wasn't. I was like, oh yes, this one ends on a different note. And the last thing I need to do is update my favorite book for the month, and I am so indecisive. I really wanted to print out the book cover and like put it on this page for the book of the month, but I don't know yet. I don't want to make a decision. So I think I'm gonna try to write it in with pencil for now, and then we'll come back to this later. I think my favorite book for this month was probably Book Lovers. I just really enjoyed the story. It was very, very good. Thanks so much for joining, friend. Check out the video on the left-hand side of the screen to see how my 24-hour readathon challenge went, and I talk a little bit more in depth about some of the books I wrote down today in my journal. As always, you are so appreciated. I will see you in the next one. Bye.